Hi, today I want to outline a short history of aesthetic taste in literary works of different people. So we will start with Plato and Aristotle. Plato and Aristotle and the other ancient Greeks did not have any specific notion of taste as a means of aesthetic judgment. However, many of the ideas inspired the later developments of theories of taste. Plato's metaphysical beliefs, especially his view of the perfect forms, had an acute influence on the later Neoplatonists, even on those who did not specifically believe in a realm of the forms. The traditional understanding of Plato holds that there is a heavenly realm where the perfect forms of reality exist. Whether or not Plato believed in a literal realm of forms is open for discussion, but it seems clear that he believed in perfect versions of everything we experience on earth. These forms are like the templates of reality, and reality is therefore less perfect than these forms. For instance, the form of beauty is the standard by which all other beautiful things are measured. To reach this higher beauty, one must rise up to it through a dialectical method, as Socrates learned for Diotima in Symposium. Almost like ascending stairs, one uses the lower beauties of the world to climb up to the higher realms. To explain, we start with physical beauty, move to intellectual beauty, and then arrive at spiritual perfect beauty. More more could be said about Plato's overall view on aesthetics and beauty, and it is important to note here simply that the apprehension of the beautiful is connected with knowledge. As one obtains knowledge, one continues to learn more of beauty. So knowledge is the key component to developing a better appreciation of beauty, and for Plato, arriving at beauty itself. Aristotle, like Plato, did not have a concept of taste per se. The quest was to uncover the principles of beauty. Rather than believing real beauty existed in another world, Aristotle wrote that beauty was a property of objects. It was related to their size and proportion. Though Aristotle did not develop a system of aesthetics as such, he is first on record to have developed an extended treatment about one of the arts, namely poetry. Since this is the main art that Plato criticized in the Republic, one might wonder whether this was Aristotle's attempt to further distinguish his own system of philosophy. While Plato's view is that beauty has the same nature but with different degrees in different objects, Aristotle seems to hold the idea that beauty's nature varies with the different objects or types of art in which it is found. Therefore, the beauty of an object might relate to the object's purpose, though he never directly says so. More important to Aristotle's view are the concepts of form and unity. As form and unity are necessary for knowledge in the strict sense, so they also provide a kind of knowledge in art as an object imitates something else. While Plato believed that art diminishes the knowledge of something to an almost unrecognizable degree, Aristotle holds that the imitation helps the idea become simpler and therefore more easily understood. The imitation can actually be a useful, sometimes necessary step in obtaining knowledge, and the imitation, though not always complete, is correct. Rather than rising to some higher forms of beauty beyond this physical world, Aristotle seems to have a more experiential approach to discovering and judging beauty. Each kind of thing has its own form and therefore its own beauty, and to develop what we might call aesthetic judgment, though Aristotle does not use that expression, one would have to observe enough samples of different objects of the same kind to discover the order and arrangement proper to these things. Both Aristotle and Plato have beauty located outside of human experience, so taste would have been the search for beauty in things. What about medieval times? Medieval philosophers were concerned with metaphysical properties, like beauty, more than any notion of individual preference or taste. This was partly because beauty, for most of the philosophers of this time, was an objective property. There wasn't any room for disagreement about whether something was actually beautiful, though they presumably debated about whether one's particular knowledge about the beauty of an object was correct. It was widely believed that the true, the good, and the beautiful were linked to each other. Talking about one of these concepts involved overlapping discussions of the other two. Continuing the basic ideas of Plato, Augustine thought perfect beauty existed in God rather than impersonal realm of the forms. In fact, God is the highest beauty, and everything participates in beauty because everything is created by God. In physical objects, Augustine believed two primary attributes made those things beautiful: equality and unity. Unity is found in everything that exists, but equality, proportional symmetry, is not necessarily found in everything, especially those things made by people. Augustine provides an example that shows we at least aim for equality in our work, and if you want to put two windows on the side of a house, you do not want one to be gigantic and the other tiny. You want them to be the same size, assuming the wall is an even rectangle. For Augustine, the judgment of beauty is founded upon a person's apprehension of the unity and equality of an object. And this involves a reason which isn't that different from previous thinkers who thought knowledge was a necessary aspect of grasping beauty. The standard of beauty is in God's mind, so the beholder must come to understand the standard through some divine illuminations. Without God's help, a person might see vaguely the beauty of an object, but it is God alone who can help the beholder grasp the fullness of beauty. Though Augustine does not have a theory of taste, we might say that one's taste is perfected the closer one is aligned with God. Unlike Augustine, Aquinas adheres more carefully to the overall philosophical views of Aristotle rather than Plato, though Plato's influence is not absent. Finding beauty presents in physical objects, and Aquinas famously asserts that beauty is what which pleases when seen. It might appear that Aquinas' definition asserts a subjective understanding of beauty, namely, whatever pleases the onlooker becomes beautiful. However, the word seen implies contemplation of the object. Once again, knowledge comes into the apprehension of the beautiful, and Aquinas' view of beauty differs from the Platonic view in that beauty is really present in the object, though similar to Augustine's view, beauty is still God, who is the ultimate cause of all beauty. Recall that Augustine offered two main traits of beautiful things: equality and unity. Similarly, Aquinas presents us with three conditions of beauty: proportion, holiness, and radiance. Proportion involves symmetry, but it's not limited to this one aspect. It involves whether there is an overall balance achieved in the object. Wholeness, or integrity, is the condition that involves the degree to which something attains its proper form. For example, a dancer sitting down is less beautiful as a dancer than when he's actually dancing. The last condition, radiance, the most evasive. It might just be for Aquinas the most important condition, because objects might have proportion and be whole yet still not be radiant. Generally speaking, it is that quality of an object that makes us want to perceive it again. It involves the way an object shines before the beholder, and for Aquinas, perceiving the beauty in an object is not passive, it's an activity of the intellect. Like judging the truth of a proposition, a judgment of beauty begins with cognition. Then the beholder makes a judgment based on these three conditions. Taste, if Aquinas had a theory, might be the ability to recognize these three universal conditions in their specific instantiations. But why taste became the metaphor for aesthetic judgment? We have mentioned briefly the basic ideas that created the foundation, the theories of taste, but we still need an explanation as to why taste became the metaphor for aesthetic judgment. The sense of taste in ancient times was connected with the appetite and not with rational judgments, and seeing and hearing provide the most information and thus were considered the best senses for gaining knowledge. The other three senses simply help round out that knowledge. Therefore, it would have been natural to assume that seeing and hearing are also the best senses for pronouncing a judgment of beauty or sublimity. After all, these two senses were thought to be necessary for making intelligent judgments. But it was taste that became the main faculty for making aesthetic judgments, especially for the 18th century philosophers. Of course, it was not literal tasting but metaphorical that was at work here. Because of this, some posited a sixth internal sense that was referred to as taste. Still, one might wonder why taste suddenly emerged as the metaphor for making judgments about beauty. Though there is no exact reason why taste rose to this prominent role, there are a couple of ideas about its worth mentioning here. In the Aristotelian tradition, taste is connected strongly with the sense of touch. Though he maintained 5 senses as we do today, Aristotle considered whether there might only be 4. It is necessary for the tongue to touch food, for example, for the food to be tasted. In the Middle Ages, this became more significant as different tastes were believed to elicit healing and nutrition on the body. It was believed that different flavors held different properties for the body, and a mixture of flavors was necessary in order to maintain healthy balance. What about 18th century philosophers? We will speak about later. See you in the next video. Goodbye.